Hello YouTube land, it's Leslie from WeLoveJones.com and We Love Jones here on YouTube, and I'm coming to you today with 10 tips for getting ready for back to school. You're going to hear some banging. My son is in the living room with his dad, and my husband was kind enough to give me a little bit of time to record a YouTube video, and my son is probably going to wake up my daughter who is napping, so anyway, that's what the thudding is. So tip number one for getting ready for back to school. And the list I came up with are things I wish somebody had explained to me last year. So I'm sharing them with you because hopefully we're all in that season right now. It happens to be summer. School year 2017-2018 is about to start. So these tips are geared for homeschoolers. I'm looking at my notes. So tip number one, research back to school deals. In the description box below, I will link a video from the YouTube channel for southernsavers.com. They have a YouTube channel. And I seriously took like a whole page of notes after watching this video. I think the video is like 24 minutes long, and I watched it once and I was kind of cooking or something. Whatever I was doing, I wasn't able to take notes. And I was just like kicking myself because I didn't know how valuable this video was. Super valuable. The lady who did this video covered school supplies, clothes, tech. I mean, she, like soup to nuts, she covered everything you need to know for back to school deals. Which that back to school season is starting. I'm recording this video on July 8th. I'm not sure when I'll post this video, but that back to school season is starting. Here in the South, kids go back at the beginning of August. So right now is the time here in the South where it's time to go back to school shopping. So back to school deals. Check out that video I link below. I also linked the video at WeLoveJones.com. If you would be so kind as to check out the We Love Jones blog, you'll find that link there too. And you can actually just hit play from the blog. It's embedded into the blog post. I do want to comment that if you're a homeschooler, back to school season is like your Black Friday. But instead of one day, it's a whole month. Depending on when your kids go back to school in your area. So for me here in Mississippi, back to school season is the last 2 weeks in July, and the first 2 weeks of August are that back to school deals. There'll be great deals the last 2 weeks of July, and there'll be really good deals the first 2 weeks of August, because all of the retail stores are going to be like, we have all this inventory left that you didn't buy before your kids went back to school. And so they're going to discount things real deeply. So back to school deals. Research now so that you will have the best savings going forward for the year. Use your curriculums. Look through them now. Buy your curriculums ahead of time so you have enough time to really plan out what school supplies do you need for the year. How much clothes will your kids need for the year? Do they need a sturdy backpack this year because you've planned just tons of field trips? Things like that. You need to think through that stuff now, because the prices won't be better later in the year. Tip number two is teacher development. Just like public school teachers have teacher development days or professional days where they have to get continuing education credits, I think most of us view our homeschooling our children as our full-time job. Being the housewife and being the full-time teacher for our kids is our full-time job, and most of us take that very, very seriously. And I encourage you to take the time to kind of do some teacher development for yourself and kind of brush up and spend some time reflecting on your child's teaching, learning preferences, and preparing for the school year. I will post a separate video on some of the research I've done and teacher development that I've looked up that I wish somebody had taught me my first homeschool year. But consider really studying your curriculum. Most curriculums in the beginning of the teacher's editions have like a whole section preparing you for how to use their curriculum, tips and tricks for using their material, scheduling it out. Study it. Doesn't mean you have to do it exactly the way they recommend or teach it exactly the way they recommend, but knowing it well enough so that you can adapt it for your child is key. And you don't want to be fumbling with that once school starts. You want to know that stuff way ahead of time. And if you have questions, now is the time to call your curriculum company. So if you're using Bob Jones or Rebecca or whatever, use what resources are available to you by the publishing company directly. And if you're doing more Charlotte Mason-y type of stuff or classical conversations, then hopefully there are web-based resources that you're already tapped into to support you. So Facebook groups, YouTube, a lot of the local homeschool groups have their own support systems. So do your research now and do your teacher development now, because once school starts, it's kind of too late. You're already in the throes of it, so you need to do it way in advance. Tip number 3 is purge. Now, I think most mommies have already done a big chunk of their purging when school ended. So now is the time to repurpose or just toss the broken crayons, the scratch paper you thought you were going to use that you never did. Whatever you need to purge to make room for the new stuff that's coming in and the new school supplies, hopefully you will be getting in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So purge to make room for stuff that's coming in. If you haven't already done so, you need to decide what schoolwork from last year you're keeping and what you're tossing, and have that done well in advance before school starts. Tip number 4, update your organization systems to accommodate the new stuff that's coming in and any new curriculum that you're using that maybe you're not familiar with. So what I mean by that, for example, my child only had one curriculum and only academic subjects last year. His Bible stuff was really pretty informal. It wasn't really structured. This year, he's going to have a Bible curriculum, and a couple other things that kind of mean I have to have tighter routines, tighter structures, tighter organization systems to accommodate an increasing complexity in what he's doing. And so think through that. Do I need to update my organizational systems to reflect any changes in curriculum this year? If you're in the early elementary school years, and you've probably got an abundance of math manipulatives, you need to maybe think through how can I organize those better. Am I about to get a bunch of new math manipulatives this year? And if so, you need to have them readily available, because you need to be able to swap them out as you're teaching new things to your child, or as you need to adapt your teaching method to for a subject that your child may be struggling with. So think through your organizational systems and update them. Hopefully you've done the purging part first, so that when you update your organizational systems, you're not kind of having to do things in tandem. Tip number 5, reevaluate your daily routines and adjust accordingly. Like I mentioned, my son went from a really simple tot school, and now he's doing a more formal preschool curriculum, and so I'm having to really think through daily routines. How am I going to adjust our daily routine so that so that we are setting ourselves up for success next school year? I'll cover that topic more extensively in the next video on instructional hacks, where I'll address daily routines for early elementary. I don't have any experience with middle school or high schoolers, though hopefully they're pretty independent by that age, and you don't need to give your child structure for daily routines. But anyway, reevaluate your daily routines. Do you need to adjust it? Because of maybe your family constellation is changing. Maybe there's a baby due soon, or maybe there's a high schooler that's leaving that used to help you with the younger ones when you were homeschooling, and they're going off to college. What most of us are going to have some change year to year, and you need to think through that, what that change is and how it's going to affect what homeschool will look like on a day-to-day basis. Where are we? Tip number 6, plan out the entire year ahead of time. I wish somebody had just like beaten this into my head last year. Last year was my first homeschool year. I think I would have done a much better job for my son if I had planned the year in advance instead of a week at a time or a month at a time. Because being able to see your curriculum choices in kind of the big picture and plan ahead of time how your curriculum is going to land on specific dates and specific holidays is super helpful. And it gives you a plan for how quickly you want to go through it and when you want to finish. So I'm sure this is like those of you who are veterans at homeschooling, but I didn't think I had to plan a year in advance for early elementary age, but you do. Just because it was taught school or just because this is preschool, in my case, doesn't mean that you don't need to think through what is the year going to look like. So where are we? However, planning for the school year doesn't mean that you shouldn't leave some wiggle room for flexibility and spontaneity. I want to have the flexibility to throw in a unit study if I've decided to expose my child to some sort of new concept that isn't covered in the curriculum, but I want him to know it this year. I want to make sure I plan for the year so I set myself up for success, but also leave just enough wiggle room so that when I want to be spontaneous about something, I can. Tip number 7, have a backup plan for the unexpected. Usually that means you're sick or one of your children is sick. But unexpected can mean other things. Anyway, so what's going to happen if you get sick? What's going to happen if your child gets sick? Are you going to have, or if your child's just grumpy, or maybe there's a special needs child in your home and they're having a bad day and it's affecting the ability of your other children to get school done that day. Okay, well then how are you going to handle that day? Having a backup plan for those unexpected kind of hiccups will go a long way. So do you have a list of, like a backup list of, can I call my in-laws? Can I call my sibling to help me that day? Can I send the child that is having a bad day off to have a special day with grandma or grandpa or whatever? Have a plan. Maybe we're going to do portable school and go outside so that the kids burn off some energy before we try to get them focused on back onto school again. Or maybe my strategy is going to be we go to the library, and because the library is so quiet, it gets them to focus back on school time. One tip that worked for me was when I was sick and I had a hard time focusing on being a good teacher for my son, is I asked my son to teach me what he did yesterday, and I asked him to be my nurse or my doctor. And so he would pretend to be my doctor, and he would check in my ears and pretend to listen to my heart, and he would nurse me. And having him teach me what he did yesterday is at least productive time. It's not a gone day. Maybe you just decide to do a half day of school that day. That's cool too. It's still a productive day. Any progress is progress to me. Tip number 8, have a plan for burnout. Burnout is going to happen. It just is. So plan those fun Fridays ahead of time. Maybe you have a longer break between subjects on Wednesdays because it's the middle of the week when people start to feel that burnout feeling. Maybe you're going to incorporate an alternative way to teach the next concept because maybe the way you've been teaching has gotten a little stale and your child needs you to all of a sudden mix it up. Teaching an accent get silly, have fun with it, but have a plan for burnout. Because if you don't plan for it ahead of time, trying to kind of recover after the fact is way harder than if you just plan for it ahead of time. So what I'm probably going to do is type up a cheat sheet for what to do in these emergencies, teaching emergencies, and so that I have a bag of tricks that I can pull from to keep my son engaged. And again, I will cover a lot of that in a future video on instructional hacks. Tip number 9. We're so close to the end here, guys. Thank you for sticking this out with me. Tip number 9. Have an idea for field trips now. So just like you've planned your homeschool for the year, plan your field trips now. There is, because you need to budget for them. Just like you have a budget for your curriculum and your school supplies, if you're going to do field trips, plan for them now. So even if you're just planning a zoo trip, an aquarium trip, or whatever, budget that out, because you'd be surprised, one, how crazy expensive that can get, especially if you have more than just a few kids. And the holidays get in the way, unexpected medical issues could come up. You just never know. So have a budget for that ahead of time, and that way your husband knows, hey, these things are going to happen on these months, and your husband can be more involved and maybe plan to go with you on on one of those field trip days and take a day off work. I mean, you just never know what's possible if you just plan for field trips in advance. That doesn't mean that you throw out spontaneity. It just means you've at least accounted for it at the beginning of the year. And last tip, have house rules. So just like in public school, they have class rules. The lines are really blurred when you're homeschooling because you're schooling at home. And so I think having a standard set of house rules that are beneficial for both school time and not school time will help you immensely. That way, if there's unexpected behavior or talking back or whatever during school time or non-school time, your children know the house rules and the expectations of their behavior, whether you're doing school or not. And house rules should be something that you repeat often and that they can mouth off just like that. I wish somebody had taught me that, because I wasn't planning on having house rules like that until my kids were 2nd, 3rd grade. You need them as early as preschool, because it's unfair to hold your child accountable for behaviors that they didn't know were expected of them. So, part of that is my son has a speech delay, so I'm not used to communicating with him in that way. So I will be correcting that this next school year. So that's it. That is my 10 tips for getting ready for homeschool back to school. I hope you found these 10 tips helpful. If you did, please show this video some love by giving it a thumbs up down below, and please leave a comment. Let's all learn from each other as we all get ready for the back to school season and school year 2017-2018. Also, please follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. The links will all be below. The links are also on the homepage of welovejones.com. So again, thanks everybody for stopping by, and I hope you are having a great day.